Welcome to the Quarter Life Lessons Podcast,
a show on the many relatable lessons learned to and through the journey of adulthood. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm CharLea. Let's get started. Stephanie, can you think of a time that a gift brought you joy?
I think some people would say maybe I'm hard to give gifts to.
Okay.
I am known to return a gift or two, but thoughtful gifts bring me joy. Like my husband adopted a manatee for me on our anniversary this last year, and it was the most, I still think of joy with it right now. Like, it's beautiful.
You own a manatee?
I don't own a manatee. I'm pretty sure Adopt the Manatees has more than one person pay for a manatee. But Phyllis is, for this year, my manatee, and I have a calendar and a luggage tag and just these things from the Adopt a Manatee Foundation. And long story short, super thoughtful gift that still today, 60, 90 days later, brings me joy when I speak about it.
Well, that's very sweet.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that you owned a manatee. I'm going to keep it like that. You can put it on your resume.
What about you, CharLea? When was a time that a gift brought you joy?
I mean, first off, I've been blessed with several gifts that have brought me joy, and I'm extremely grateful for them. If I specifically recall a gift that I got from someone that brought me like immense joy immediately, was at my Sweet 16, and it was a picture of me and the other person in Head Start, like at our Head Start graduation.
Oh.
Yeah, it was so sweet, and I think this was the first time that I was ever brought to tears by a gift.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think that it had that effect, one, because it was so unexpected, and this specific gift affected me in that way because it was a depiction of a time that was so easy and fun and blissful. I mean, like, kindergarten was great, or preschool, or whatever we were in. And, you know, in high school, I had a hard time with what I now know is numbing emotions and disassociation. So for something to give me an emotional reaction is huge. Again, as far as I can recall, I think that is the first time, or one of the first times, that I've ever cried because I was happy. And it was just really thoughtful, and it was a clever gift, and it was a reminder of how great that moment in my childhood was.
That's amazing.
Steph, I have a question for you on this topic of gifts. And Thrivers, be sure to head to Instagram and give your input on this. When it comes to gifts, is it really only the thought that counts?
I think most people's, like, instantaneous, maybe even socialized response is yes. But
Right.
when you sit there and critically think to yourself, okay, if the answer is no, what would be the other factors or elements? Maybe the value, like, I don't know why my brain goes to monetary value or time, what was invested into this thing.
Exactly.
So, like, if someone shows thought because they know your favorite candy and they got you, you know, a bar of candy or whatever, or let's say it's a truckload of candy, is that judged the same, if you will, or does it feel or carry as much value as something that took more thought that is smaller, or something that you didn't even know you were going to love, but they just know you that well? I'm not sure. So, I don't know. The answer I have is, I would say yes, but I bet there are instances where the answer is no, too.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. Like, when I was preparing this episode, I was like, I can't just say yes to that. And as easy as it would be,
right,
it's because, you know, it's agreeable that everybody wants to be thought about and cared about. But over time, I feel like the amount of effort and balance in the relationship makes a difference.
Sure.
Whether we intend to or not, gifts are often a reflection of how you view me and the relationship that we have. over time, it can be obvious if the gifts are not aligning. I'm not necessarily talking monetary costs, even though that could be a factor for some people. But I think that gifts, if we just stated a definition, can be any sort of energy exchange. So whether that be time spent together, a monetary exchange, or an exchange of effort and energy. So, for example, let's say money is a barrier for somebody. I think it's very noble to say, you know what, I don't have the means to give a gift in that way. Then you think of a gift or think of ways that you can still show that person you care. You act on the thought. Acting and follow through will show that you do care for the person. If follow through is there, I for sure would agree that the thought is what counts, because there was follow through and the action makes a world of a difference. Here's how the opposition of that sounds. You know, I wanted to give you a gift or do something to show you that I care, but I didn't have any money. Sorry about that. But I do care about you, really, though, I do.
Right, or the ever-present, I got you something, but I don't have it right now. I'm going to get that to you. And then it never really manifests.
Right, like, I mean, late gifts, sure. Like, you already got it.
Right, but let's say it never comes. It was like just an excuse in the moment, but
yeah.
They think you forgot when really you didn't forget.
I feel like that little, what is that even called, saying that it's the thought that counts can be used as a cop-out.
Right.
It's overused, and it's just a leeway for more excuses.
Obviously, in love languages, Thrivers, if you know what that is, if you've read into that, gift giving is one, and if you're in a relationship with someone and gift giving is how they feel loved, then you have to take this very seriously. And even here, CharLea, you're talking about gifts as an exchange of time as well, which is quality time, things like that. So it's really about not so much the word gift as it is showing up in love for someone, however they best receive that. To cop out on that is very hurtful.
Especially repeatedly.
Repeatedly, right. And then using a socialized term like it's the thought that counts, I wanted to give you something without ever following through, is just as bad as like completely ignoring you.
Honestly, I mean, it also is just as hurtful to be forgotten, so I don't know if those can be measured against each other.
Maybe it would be just as hurtful to be completely forgotten, and there's probably a right way to explain to someone that due to some other constraints or pressures in your life, you were not able to show up for them the way you wanted to, but then don't overpromise and underdeliver, right?
Yeah.
Express whatever constraints, whether that's time, money, their own mental health, whatever constraint it is that limited your ability to show up for the person you love. Mm-hmm. Express that, especially if they love gifts or are expecting a gift and you know that about the person.
Right.
But I think don't overpromise and underdeliver. Don't say, I'm going to come over and clean your apartment, or I'm going to babysit for you next time, or I'm going to take you to lunch, something like that. Or I got you a gift, it's just not here, to try and compensate.
Right.
Because I think that's hurtful too. And sometimes we socially say those things, or like you said, it's the thought that counts. I wanted to get you something, but I couldn't.
Right.
I think those are overpromise, underdeliver.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a whole host of excuses that you can use. But I do like what you said about there's a right way. I don't even necessarily know what it is. But there is a right way of, if you did truly forget, to not be absent. And again, you can follow through there too. You can recover from that. And I'm not saying it's a have to. I think it is a very large representation of character when you don't.
Especially if this is a relationship where you know that's how the person feels loved.
Right.
And if you are trying to show someone that you value them and care for them.
Right.
Why would you use a phrase like, I thought about you for 1 second, and then I recognized the constraints on me are more important, and I just wanted to tell you that.
like, it sounds so ridiculous because I feel like it is like that. Why would you even tell me?
Right.
But at the same time, yeah, anyways, it's complicated, but I do think in some ways, just actions in general need to align with the words as much as possible. So if you're saying, I was going to, but, like, automatically, like, what is it that's stopping
Don't
you?
use
like,
it. Right.
like, unless the world ended, unless something, like, actually happened, and even then, there's probably still some sort of time to recover.
So far, what are some of the life lessons you've learned about gift giving, CharLea?
Well, there's a few. Again, first things first that I learned about gift giving is gratitude is so huge.
Yeah, it's hard because receiving a gift, whatever it is, should be something you receive with gratitude, right? That's what kind of the golden rule. I know that's not the golden rule, but yeah. Receive it and say thank you. That's polite, if you will.
Yeah.
But if this person means a lot to you, you've shown up for them in a lot of ways, or if they're your intimate partner and they know you best, and the way that they execute that gift is not something that you were expecting, or maybe you're disappointed, or it's not quite the right item for you.
Right.
It can be frustrating and difficult, and maybe it's not fitting. Maybe you have high expectations, which you could probably work on the person could work on as a human.
Right.
But you are allowed to have your feelings.
Yeah.
And whatever they are, they're valid. In my experience recently, receiving a gift or a couple of years of gifts from a person, because I felt like they didn't put the effort in, I didn't really put a lot of gratitude into it, and I returned them. And that returning of the item hurt their feelings. And so it was something we had to talk through to say, I didn't realize that returning this item was going to hurt your feelings. Here's how I was feeling. I didn't really need this item and all of these things. So the way I changed that mentality was I tried to think more about, hey, I wasn't the next time they gave me a gift, I wasn't expecting this. I don't know that I would have gotten this for myself or wanted this, but I love it so much that you thought I could benefit from it. And for some reason, in that moment, this cloud of expectation was like lifted off my shoulders, and I used the item that I probably would have returned because I didn't even think about wanting it. And I could experience this like little bit of joy from it because my expectation of it kind of was gone. Yeah.
And there is always the outliers of things that you never would have known you needed, or it's just an outside looking in. Maybe somebody that's been through something similar was like, hey, I really needed this thing, and now they're giving it to you. So there's always outliers, of course. That's a really good perspective to have, and a good example of how to have that conversation, even if it's an internal thing, before you have that conversation with the person who bought the gift.
And changing my perspective on that, CharLea, was an internal conversation.
Love that.
So I do want to say that's the important piece. It wasn't for me that I need to tell this person.
Right.
I hope this doesn't come off offensive. I'm going to lower my expectations for gifts from you.
Right.
It was something I did to myself because I think I was putting too high expectations out there. Fair. Personally. Fair. So I had to change my perspective. And I'm telling you, it happened recently. So I'm telling you that the aftermath, if you will, that the happening after the gift giving took place, it definitely made them feel appreciated. But all of a sudden, I could feel better about the gift too.
Yeah. Right. And I just want to make this clear. I'm not saying start with gratitude because you have to accept gifts from people you don't want, or accept gifts that you don't want. This is not an opening for people to be creepy, so don't think that's what's happening.
No creepers.
Right. But in the same breath, people that you are caring about, the gift giving, exchange, and receiving can be sensitive. Next lesson. Overall, I learned that I love gifts that are meaningful to me and that are actually things that I like. So we had talked about this a little bit. And I I especially like when I don't have to ask what I like. And I feel like if I didn't have to ask, or I didn't have to tell you about something that I wanted, like, directly, it really just makes me feel seen and paid attention to, or that you have listened to me or been around me enough to know things that would bring me joy. And that's huge.
Right.
I feel like that's a very big indicator that the relationship is going well.
Yeah, I would say that that's how maybe you feel validated and, like you said, seen, heard by your friend or partner, or...
Exactly. And I feel like because I have that underlying wound or what have you of not being seen and heard very often, that getting a gift that makes me feel seen and heard and paid attention to is priceless.
Right.
Yeah.
I think gifts may be one of your love languages. Isn't it true we all have all five? It's
right.
just whether or not it's primary.
Oh yeah, yep, it is. I like gifts, and I especially like them when they are given with thought behind them. So moving on from that previous point of getting gifts that you didn't necessarily have to ask for, this can also go wrong. And what I mean by this is, if I receive a gift that maybe I liked in the past, or I maybe never would ever align myself with, it's not that I'm not grateful, because I am, but there's still a level of disappointment there. It's disappointment because automatically, to me, it's maybe that person doesn't see the growth that I've had, or they have not taken the time to get to know who I am today. When you're not really engaged with somebody in how they are showing up in the present, you're gifting things for a version of me that does not exist, or a version of that person that no longer exists.
Sure, like if you are, let's say somebody's struggling with addiction, and you give them some alcohol because you used to be,
exactly.
Wine ladies together or something. That could be so undermining to your progress. And I would hope that a close friend of you or anyone would not try and make those errors. Now, tiny errors, but big life-changing errors around those types of things could be really, a gift could turn hurtful for sure.
To add to that, if that example isn't as relatable, I know we've used the alcohol thing before. This is made up, by the way. Let's say my favorite restaurant in high school was a steakhouse, and I've recently became a pescatarian, and I made it clear, I've said it on several occasions since you have been around, and it's not that I haven't been back to the steakhouse. I've stated it on several occasions, haven't been back to the steakhouse, and you give me a steakhouse gift card. I'm thankful for the thought, but you don't see or hear me as the person I am today.
Sure. And that may feel very invalidating, and I must not be important to this person.
Yeah, like the time we spend together, you're not present with me. You're not engaged in that time, which is very much possible, but it does bring about, I feel like, something that would have to be addressed in order to have a prospering relationship in the future.
Yeah, and that's an example of not just I'm disappointed in this gift. You're talking about something that makes you feel invalidated,
right,
in the relationship you have with this person.
Right.
Which is deeper than just disappointed.
Absolutely. Another question for you, Steph. How do you feel about project gifts? Let's say I bought you a ticket to Disney, but it was just the entry.
And I have to take myself the rest of the way there?
Exactly.
Only time that would be acceptable is if maybe you had talked about everyone's going to Florida or everyone's going to California, or in my family we do a lot of milestone birthdays. and nobody probably gets you a gift, but everyone pays their own way to New Orleans or what have you. So only time I think that would be a nice thing to do. Only time I think that would be a nice thing to do is if you'd already kind of planned to go there together and it was like a bonus.
Right, that was exactly my thought. If I received something that may or may not be considered a project, it would be a lot more meaningful or helpful to someone if the situation was, maybe you previously discussed, oh, we're going on a family vacation this week in the year to Disney, and maybe you coordinate with the other people that you know are going on the vacation or somehow, and then you surprise them by paying for that something on the trip or something similar. I think that is great, but I don't want to call it an inconvenience, but I don't necessarily want to be inconvenienced by your gift, because now it's almost like, okay, well, I have this ticket to Disney, especially, you know, if you've never been there, like, I don't know when my next opportunity would be, but now it may be days off work. You have to get your flight. You have to eat. You have to stay somewhere. Are you going by yourself? Like, that's a lot. And a gift like that can be put into a lot of other different scenarios. And drivers, I want to hear some other scenarios that you have of what we can maybe define as a project gift. Because it can definitely be smaller things than a whole trip to Disney that still may cause some inconvenience for the person that you're trying to gift.
Yeah. I have an example of a project gift that I don't think causes a bunch of anxiety or burden like you're talking about, but I have to remember to use it. It's this really cool kind of like date night book where you scratch it off and you do the date night. And our friend gave it to us and I just loved the idea, but it does require like a next action from you. And I'm not saying this is a bad gift at all. This is a really cool gift. And when I see the book, I'm like, I need to do these things, right?
Right.
But sometimes I don't get to experience the value of that gift because I haven't put my effort into it to like feel the joy of the pieces. It brought me joy. I know that it's there. I really want to use it. But that's kind of a project gift that maybe doesn't have the frustrating component.
Yeah.
But it does require my follow through to, and if we use this book over a couple of years, really execute on the value.
Yeah. And again, I think that it's important if you see a need or you see something that maybe your friend or your loved one really could benefit from. Stephanie, I think you work really hard, so you probably can benefit from plenty of date nights and plenty of, you know, times to rest and just enjoy things and not have to even worry about it. You just get to take the gift card out and go.
Right.
I feel like the cost of it is taking out a little bit of the inconvenience. I honestly don't think it's an inconvenience at all because there's a need there or there's a benefit.
Yeah, I was saying that one's a positive example of a project gift.
Yeah.
But still requires your follow through.
You do
so
have
it's
to
like
follow
in
through.
that scenario, it's me who needs to bring more to the table to get the full value of the gift.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like we stated in the previous episode we discussed on birthdays, giving someone an elaborate gift or giving something that took a lot of effort on your end does not guarantee a difference in how you were treated in return. And this was a tough one to learn because, again, because of my high expectations that not only I hold for myself, but also held for the other person in the relationship, I definitely felt let down by my own doing because I was comparing two different things. And also, I feel like I very much so romanticized in a non-romantic way how deep our friendship was. Or I also felt like I can make this relationship or this friendship deeper by doing XYZ.
That's what I'm hearing is maybe overcompensation.
Yeah.
And that can be so hard, is also violating your own boundary.
Yes.
And then being upset at the other person for not reciprocating.
Exactly.
And that's really hard. You got to keep that stuff in check, because boundaries are there for yourself.
Exactly.
And also for other people not to cross.
Right. So that's time boundaries,
right.
Energy boundaries, money boundaries. If you know that someone could never repay you, and again, think of the reason why you're giving a gift to someone. Because if your reasoning is because you want something in return, maybe it's not the appropriate gift to be giving.
Exactly. That's really interesting. If someone's love language is gifts and they love giving and receiving gifts, and like any of the love languages, why do you think my love language manifests in this way?
Yeah.
And I would say keeping that in check too, so you don't get hurt and you don't hurt others. And I'm not saying don't indulge in gift giving and gift getting. Just check in on it every once in a while and make sure you're not putting yourself up for hurt.
Yeah.
And to understand the degree to which it is important to you. I think we owe it to our closest friends, family, and loved ones to tell them what's important to us.
That is such a good segue to the next point, Stephanie. I know I have a bunch of hopefully recovering people pleasers out there. But please, please hear me when I say, when people ask you what you want for a gift, speak up and be honest. I understand that sometimes, again, the monetary aspect comes into play. I'm not saying run people out of house and home, but I am saying that the people pleaser in you and trying to be an easy gift receiver makes it a lot less likely for you to get something that you want. If they ask to get you something that you would like, I'm a strong advocate in letting them. Let people show up for you. Let people love you. Let people help you. Even though you may be independent and get a lot of things on your own. That's great. But if you don't leave room for people to show up for you or give gifts and celebrate you, then you can't exactly be mad when no one is doing any of that for you.
Oh gosh, that's a good one. That's a good one. You can't be upset when people don't show up for you if you don't make space for them to show up for you. And if they chose the wrong way to show up for you because you've never told them how you need them.
Exactly. Literally the exact point. Because it's the difference between saying people suck at getting me gifts because I made them guess what to get me after they asked, or I gave you options of what I like and you gifted me something that you thought I would like because you're not hearing or listening to me. Those are two completely different things, and it's just important to be mindful of what end of the spectrum you're on.
That's a good point. There's a balance in all of those things, I think.
Absolutely a balance in everything. Last point, just to kind of wrap things up. Sometimes the gift is you showing up. And I think that, one, it's very important to show up for people, especially because, as many of us know, once it comes to having adult birthdays, you're usually the one that's going to plan it. Whether you want to or not. And let's say you plan this elaborate dinner and it really is nice to just have people there and spend time with you. And on the other hand, let's say we all go out of town, like you had mentioned earlier, on our own dimes for your birthday. You may still get a few small gifts, possibly, but I don't think there's room to expect gifts because of everything that you've already spent to go on the trip. So the gift would be the quality time there. So again, like we said earlier, with a trip, it's days off work, the plane ticket, the hotel, the food, the effort to stay present and do the activities and have energy while you're there on the trip. It all adds up too.
Oh yeah, I think personally, those are some of my favorite gifts. When people have planned a little day trip for me or an activity to do together, explore, a couple of milestone trips we've gone on where there isn't really opening presents on the trip, but it's about spending 3 days with the girls or, whatnot. Those are so meaningful. And you said showing up, but it's also the memory.
Yes.
I know we're talking a little bit more about physical gifts, and we talked a little about how that can be maybe more quality time, but I think making memories with people is such a gift.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, we just have to reflect on how much memory we forget or how many things get lost in time. So making those memories, those distinct memories, those ones that are hard to forget, are absolutely crucial to relationships. As always, the conversation does not end here. We want to know your thoughts on these topics. Join us on Instagram at quarterlifepod to share your perspective and continue the conversations to thrive. Thank you for tuning in to the Quarter Life Lessons podcast. Find new episodes every month on Spotify, YouTube, and our Buzzsprout website.